Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops. I'm here with my co-partner out of Austin, Matthew Lin. Hey Matthew, how are you?
Jean doing awesome. It's finally cooling off in Austin. So that is good news for us down here.
Nice, very good. And today we have the absolute pleasure of meeting with Anthony Dioria, or Tony, as he also goes by. Tony currently works at ValueWise as a consultant, helping companies deliver on their CS ops or CS strategy. But prior to that, he was at Uberflip, and even prior to that, he was at a small company called Oracle. And so, really great to have you over here, Tony. Pleasure you having on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
All right. Well, get into it. Tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah,
Tell
so
like what we normally ask like how you got into CS ops, and maybe you'll go there too, but like what are you doing now at ValueWise, and who are the types of people you're talking to, and even what are you hearing sort of in the wind right now?
yeah, absolutely. So at ValueWise, I am one of our principals on the team. I came into ValueWise leading our strategy consulting practice, and then moved into a role that was a bit more focused on acquisition of new clients. And now I'm spread really across the entire business from that acquisition point to leading and running projects, but really ensuring that the projects that we deliver really hit those value points for our clients and really align with the outcomes that we designed and that we agreed on at the beginning of an engagement, and then carrying that through to seeing where else we can help. And yeah, we are focused on CS strategy, but also CS operations. So we have a practice within our business that is focused on operationalizing customer success strategies. A lot of that happens within Gainsight. That's where really I would say the core of our technical expertise is, but we do work with other products as well. One that I'm really passionate about right now is Gong, and we can get into some of those specifics about the ops there in a little bit as well. But what got me into CS ops is so Jean, you had mentioned Uberflip as a company that I had been with previously. And we worked together a little bit there when you were at ValueWise. Yeah, we brought Gainsight on, and I was leading a team of CSMs at the time, and I was really involved in the purchase of Gainsight, but we did not have an admin, and so it was kind of a everybody dig your hands in, and I got a little bit carried away in there and really excited by the technology, and not just Gainsight specifically, but just having a system to operationalize what we were doing, to measure some of the stuff that we were doing and really get more insights about our clients. That's when I really got my hands into the system, and that carried over into my role at ValueWise, again, being more on the strategy side of the business, but it's really important to understand how the technology works so you can design solutions that, are right sized for that. And also at the same time at that previous company, I got my hands into Gong a bit as well. And what was exciting about that is the organization at the time was really focused on Gong for the sales use case. And I was starting to look at it from the CS use case. So I don't know. I like getting my hands into a system and figuring out all of the different ways that it can work, and the different ways that you can, I don't necessarily want to say break it, but kind of go outside of the bounds of the traditional use case of a system to get something done that's creative, and also bringing value to the business. You also asked, who am I working with, or like, who am I talking to, and what am I hearing? Um, So we talk with a lot of leaders at ValueWise across many different types of businesses, heavily in B2B tech. We work with a lot of organizations that were not born in the cloud, but that are in that transition from on-prem solutions to, hybrid, or, migrating fully over to cloud. That's a really big piece of work, and really requires a lot of technology to kind of stand that up, gain that visibility, and also manage that change of, selling something and maybe selling something again a couple years down the road, to really having to focus on creating value, getting adoption, and getting that renewal. And systems are super important for that, and the operations behind that are really important. But kind of moving that needle, the ops piece is something that is not always top of mind for these businesses, not necessarily, they've got sales ops, they've got marketing ops, but understanding that you need to make a similar investment in CS ops because it is such a, big piece of the business, with so many things running to support that. So yeah, we're talking with a lot of those types of leaders on those types of transitions, and then really across the board, we are talking a lot about AI. We're, getting all of these questions about how to bring AI into enable CSMs, support the whole CS motion. A lot to still figure out in that capacity, but also conversational intelligence and bringing that in and kind of, I'm starting to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but one thing that I recommend to a lot of my clients is, look at, I've said sales and marketing ops, but look at what the tech stack looks like there. And, to me, from an operational standpoint, not just from a strategy and process standpoint, but there are so many different tools in a tech stack that are required to support the operations of those two pieces of the business. And start thinking about how to mimic that over on the CS side, because all of the intelligence and all of the kind of pipes and inner workings are all just as critical. So I like to see that move, and I feel like we're starting to see that as the CS tech stack starts to expand.
I really like that because I'm a firm believer as well. Like if we were all using the same tools, maybe our worlds would be a little bit less siloed out, and so maybe better access to customer data across the board and better decision making as well. So I really like that approach. LinkedIn tells me that you're just shy of 1 month of being at ValueWise for 4 years. So I suspect you've seen a few different trends or different patterns that kind of keep coming up. And this pattern of like everyone exploring AIs seems to be like maybe the most hottest topic right now. But you just touched on like the tech kind of starting to merge and moving together. You mentioned Gong. Are you seeing that across the CSP space as well, or are you seeing people kind of move more from the traditional CSPs, which maybe not that traditional because it's not that old, moving from CSPs to like more of the CRM or the marketing automation world?
Yeah, we are starting to hear a bit more of that. I think, when I started at ValueWise, it was like the CSP was the thing. And I think it certainly still is, and I believe it should be. But if you bring all of these other pieces together and put them onto your CRM, you can work out something kind of interesting. I was speaking with a prospect, not a prospect of mine, but a prospect of a vendor, who was actually using Gong as their entire CSP, which I thought was really interesting. And I'd kind of seen some of this at play before. Not to get too into the weeds of it, but just kind of instead of managing an account, managing a renewal op. So a renewal op always being created and then just managing risk against that renewal op. And so I thought that was a really interesting and creative way to use a system that was not necessarily designed to be that end-to-end system of action. But I don't know, that there's some potential there, I think, to kind of unlock that. And I am seeing a bit more, I wouldn't say build versus buy, because it's not full build of building your own thing, but it's kind of pulling a few things together. The AI piece is interesting because I feel like everyone is starting to use AI in some element, like on the individual level within their role. And obviously that needs operational management and some kind of guidelines around that, privacy, security, all of that, especially as you get into some of these larger organizations. But I'm not really, the conversation's starting to open up is like, how can I use AI to be something to help remove the administrative burden of some of the daily tasks? And a CSM, for example, has many of them, right? So how can we kind of help with that? And, you know, starting to get a little bit more into how can AI, you know, manage outreach and manage journeys and things like that. I'm not seeing as much talk about that. And I think that's because many organizations haven't fully fleshed out strategically what that looks like from the end to end for them. So if they're not even, if you don't feel 100% confident in, the manual way of doing that, I mean, the AI might be able to figure that out for you, but I think it takes a lot to then just put your faith into that. But what we are seeing more, and I feel like this is long delayed, is um, early warning signs, triggers from, what I'm going to say, like the basic functionality of just like crawling over emails and calls for keywords. And that's something, again, I'm a huge Gong champion. That's something that Gong does really well. I know there are many other similar platforms out there. What I am learning about Staircase AI, which is now part of Gainsight, is that it has some of these kind of early warning trigger things. To me, that's like the low hanging fruit. That and it's not even a question for me. I think there's so much value in that, and that goes back to looking at, what is your sales team using? And if you had a sales team that's using something for conversational intelligence and you wanted to pull that out, like that's just become such a critical piece of that tool. Same thing with something like SalesLoft for sending emails. All of these things are AI based, without going full on, let the AI take over this, piece of the life cycle. Just how can it help support a piece of the life cycle, and how can it make you more intelligent? And that's what I think is the intelligence part, is where things will start to pick up. And then we'll get into the actual taking the action part a little further down the line. I don't know if the readiness is there yet, and the trust.
I've wondered that as well, and I've sort of sensed, okay, on the AI front, we all got into like the conversational intelligence, the meeting summarizations, that seems pretty comfortable now
Yeah,
for us. Where I wonder, and maybe you're seeing this, Tony, or speaking of it, is there's still a rules-based customer journey. There's still a rules-based expansion algorithm. There's still a rules-based risk formula, right? And this and this and this happens, and we kick out a risk somewhere in the system, in the CSP, and someone works it. And I'm wondering if that's the next horizon, that's the next layer, which is like, breaking down or breaking through maybe some of the rules-based stuff where somebody still had to go figure out all that logic, and the
right.
staircase AI, or something comes in and sort of crawls and says, yeah, you didn't even train me to look for this, but there's something here that could be worth looking at.
Absolutely. But that boils down to me, who do you know that trusts their data enough to, to kind of let the system make the decisions without passing through a human for validation? And that's where, as everyone's talking about AI, and at Pulse, Gainsight showed these really cool things, and I'm like, I want to be a CSM again, because I want that, and that would be saying a lot for me to want to go be a CSM again and manage a whole bunch of ARR. Um, um, but I'm like that is really cool stuff. But find me a business that is so comfortable with their data that you're gonna set some of that stuff on autopilot. And I would love to, like, that would be really exciting to see. But I don't know. That's the piece that, does anyone feel like they have clean data? And the organization with the cleanest data still probably is going to have questions about that. So until that gets figured out and there is confidence in that, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a hesitation or a drop off when it comes to the AI point. And maybe that's the next frontier. I spent years working in marketing automation, and a lot of the vendors and partners of my clients were focused on, cleaning up customer data for B2B and B2C marketing, and, getting that database in order and all of that. And that was, a really, rich area to be in. And I know that exists for customer success. But maybe that's where we need to see some additional or some new development. And I haven't really explored that area, but yeah, I think that's going to be something that's required in order to give the level of comfort
Yeah.
to businesses going down the AI path fully fledged.
And it seems like there's the data component, and then there's what does the AI do with it? And if the AI is giving some recommendation to the human, great, that's just, additional insight. But if
Yes.
the AI is going to take the action, I think that's the other component of where we lose a lot of trust, right? Like, we don't know what the AI is going to think about our data, and there's a bit of a black box there. And then what action should it take? Like, you can train it all you want, but it eventually will learn on its own and kind of try to figure. So it's almost, in a way, because I've been investigating this topic as well. It's almost like the AI is less controllable than a human in a way,
Right.
because at least the human is incentivized to do.
We all saw Terminator. We know how this works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. The incentivization, right? You know, what you're being measured on, whether or not there is a compensation component to that. So really caring about what the outcome is
Yeah.
and bringing in, that weighting and that personal relationship you have with somebody. And that's why, a lot of health scores have overrides for different things is, I don't need to flag this, or I don't need to make this as, because I understand this customer, I understand this account, I understand the seasonality of their business, for, just one example.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, all of those components.
The human touch.
Human touch, yeah, for sure.
I think someone summarized it for me well when she said, well, the AI is really good at finding patterns. It's really good at processing a lot of data, even while we sleep, but it's terrible at forming a relationship. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can get on that train. I can get on that train pretty readily.
Yeah. I like to check myself sometimes too when I'm thinking about this stuff and just put it into the B2C context. And so, we've all interacted with many chatbots trying to get some type of customer service issue resolved. And while some have been more impressive than others, how many times are you really just navigating that so you can talk to an agent? And not because you are impatient with the AI. And, there are definitely times where I'm like pushing zero or typing agent into the chat bot or whatever it is, but because the answer is really not coming up, or it is not really reflecting back what I need. So the only solution is that they have to turn you over to an agent. And so that's, it's very different in the B2B context. But when you think about the investment that's being made on the B2C side of things, and that path, that journey, that experience that is being curated for you isn't even serving up what you need, translating that into B2B, if you've had that experience on the B2C side, how willing are you to put your trust on the B2B side, which is in the back end, a lot of the same technology, right? So, that's where I often like to check myself on, readiness to really explore that. And again, coming from marketing automation, it's like, I think the same thing when it comes to even just email segmentation and campaigns that I'm a part of. How often is that segmented properly where I feel like I'm getting the right things? Like I'll get, random things from different brands, and I'm like, well, I don't need bridesmaids dresses, so I don't know why I'm getting that email from this company. So whatever cadence I'm in there doesn't really make much sense.
That's funny. We don't judge, but yeah, off a little bit. I wanna pull back off the AI conversation just for a minute,
Yeah.
unless we end back there. That's cool. To something you said pretty early on where you're talking about your value-wise experience in speaking with your customers, ensuring you get to the outcomes that you agreed upon
Yeah.
beforehand. And I think in ops especially, it's really easy to be the order taker, to be the punch it out type of person, especially in the era of CSPs. How how do you recommend folks in ops or in CS in general clarify, like get really good agreement on those outcomes? And then how do you sort of revisit them at the end to ensure that you got there or you didn't?
Yeah. Well, I think developing those outcomes is a very consultative process because as you know, as any ops admin, for example, knows, when the business comes to you and asks you to set up or configure something in the system, often what they're asking for is not actually what they need, or maybe there's a more efficient way of doing that, or you know, it needs to be questioned, and there needs to be a conversation around that, and that is embedded in the way that we work, but that also comes very much on the front end of this, I'll say in the sales process, right? If we are focused on something that is a little bit more operationally heavy versus strategy heavy, is having those conversations and ensuring, like, not only is like, okay, you want a health score or something, and I'm probably not going to come up with the best example here, but you want to, implement Gainsight Journey Orchestrator, is like, what are you actually trying to achieve with that? We bring it back to that business outcome and not just the tactical outcome of what it is that needs to be configured, implemented, launched. But if you are, for example, let's stick with the Journey Orchestrator, you want to implement Gainsight Journey Orchestrator. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to, reduce time that is spent on, again, manual tasks of sending out emails? Are you trying to have further reach? Are you trying to, increase adoption? And what business metrics can we tie to that? But really having that discussion around, what is it you are ultimately trying to achieve, and will help you get there. So again, if it is, we want to scale CS, and we want to reach our long tail, low touch, low ARR segment, we're probably going to recommend that a piece of that is implementing Journey Orchestrator or some type of digital campaign. But we might look at other pieces of that as well and make other recommendations of, functionally, how do we get there, and how do we get to that you now are able to communicate with 40% more of your clients without having to hire headcount that actually then goes and manages those communications, those relationships, those warnings that might come up in the system. So it's really having that open discussion and making sure that we're really getting to the crux of what is the business problem we're trying to solve, rather than tactical requests that might necessarily come in. And our architects follow along that same path, as we are in an engagement and we are focused on that larger business outcome. When we get into some of those tactics, we're brought in because of our subject matter expertise, because of our experience using these platforms. And we also are there to kind of, question the status quo, make recommendations based on what we see as best practice, but then also what we've seen in other organizations on other projects, and really, again, weighing that outcome against, all right, best practice for doing this might be this way, but since this is your outcome and this is your environment and this is your readiness within your business, we're actually going to recommend it this way. We're very unbiased in the sense that we are product agnostic. So we're not gonna, if you come to us as a Gainsight customer, or you were to come to us as a Tatango customer or something, um, you know, we're obviously going to want you to use the platform to the best of its capabilities, but we're going to challenge what you might be asking for and potentially recommend, why don't you do that little piece in Salesforce and do this piece in your CSP, because that is what makes most sense for the way your business is run, and the way that your users interact with your platforms, and what's going to be the, the best outcome for adoption, and success in achieving that outcome. So we really look at all of those pieces, but we are constantly questioning. And sometimes that, you asked, how do you ensure that you hit that point at the end, is checking in. Is that still our goal? Is that still, does the reason that we're here, does that ring true? Does that need to change? Does that need to evolve? So having those check-ins really at all levels of the project.
I think you're touching on like two core skills there that I think ops people need. And one of them is, that outcome mindset, right? And then the other piece is like, how do you figure out the world within the environment and like you kind of have to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife to try to like string things together and like, oh, I'll take a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and then I've got a solution.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that comes to mind of like key skill sets that you think makes a good operator or a good practitioner in consulting with companies around their operations?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that we do well is we really blend the art and the science. So I'm more on the art side, more focused on the strategy, versus the science, or maybe I have those reversed. The science being more the hands-on keyboards, like really knowing the guts of the system. I can only get so far in that capacity myself. But I think really understanding both, so that if you are on the operator side, where you are, hands-on keyboards in the system, not just configuring it, but designing solutions for it, is really understanding the business problems and what a day in the life is of the people that are going to use the system. So understand, if we're talking, like a Gainsight admin or a CSP admin, is, understanding like, what is a CSM's job? What is a CSM measured with? What are they measured by? Looking at leadership, getting up to, NRR, and just understanding that side of the business and what that day in the life is like will help you craft and design better solutions. And then also, when you are actually physically building those, understand like, does this even make sense? And thinking about the UX of that as well, right? You can only do so much about the UX, but how many clicks is that to get this one thing done? Where should, getting really granular is, where should things be configured? Where should things be set from like a field level, for example? But being able to bridge the two. That's why all of our strategy practitioners are certified Gainsight admins, and all of our Gainsight admins have gone through Gainsight training. All of our architects have gone through Gainsight CS training as well, so that we have a good understanding across the business, and it brings also that empathy of like, I understand what that side of the business is doing, and so this is how I can impact it in kind of my area of things.
Yeah, putting those two together seems so key. And I love this art and science approach, or yin and yang. I don't know, it was whatever.
I got art and science right.
That's right. We just don't know left and right brain, maybe. I mean,
Right.
there are a zillion analogies there.
Right. I don't know which one's left and which one's right, but I know that they're different, and I know that they need to be. Yeah, exactly.
So give us as we wrap up, give us a prediction. Give us some sort of outlandish idea or something that you see coming down the road. I've gotten to talk to you a couple times, Tony, and other events, so I know you kind of have a big ideas brewing. So what do you see down the road?
From an operation standpoint, are you looking specifically to like
I
what
am opening the
admin
aperture as
team?
wide as you want it to be.
Yeah. Huh. Um, I mean, this is a boring one, but um, you know,
Science.
cert I mean, it's not like an exciting zany one or anything like that, but Certinia's got their new CS Cloud, and I think that's going to be an interesting player because it is built right into Salesforce. Um, and I think that's going to be enticing. And I think it's going to feel really comfortable. Um, I've seen in some recent clients or prospects is we've got a new CTO, COO, and they are a Salesforce shop person. And so I think that's going to be really enticing. And I also think it's going to be less daunting than getting outside of I mean, I don't actually find Salesforce that comfortable to operate in personally, but the UI, again, that user experience, that comfort level, I think that's going to be an interesting player on the landscape. So I don't know how that's going to shake things up. Um, that's one thing I see coming. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about AI. I would love to see more of these kind of AI assistant type things that you see in sales and marketing start to market themselves on the CS side of things. I don't think any of them are doing a great job of that now. They obviously can offer things to fit the use case. And they'll say that, but I haven't seen anyone do like a real big push. I think, the field is green for that. Um, yeah,
I like those.
I
Those
I
are
think
like
they're
good.
safe predictions. Um, I'd love to come up with something, really controversial, but I don't know if I have one.
all right.
Do
All
either
right.
of you have a controversial take on what might happen in the next little bit?
No, well, I think those two that you actually gave are a little bit controversial, like Certinia, or for
Depending
the
on who's
audience,
listening.
like formerly known as Financial Force, if people have used them for their PSA. Yeah, new player in the market. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
There's obviously that shakeup that happened recently with Tango and Catalyst as well. So
Yep.
I don't know. We'll see what happens in the market space, but I think yeah, lots of changes. Gainsight just bought Staircase as well, so we'll see
Yeah.
where all this is headed. But there seems like there's a lot of seeds being planted everywhere, and so we'll see.
It does. And I do think the AI thing is going to shake things up. I don't think materially on the way people are doing business yet, but I think the optics of AI are going to really create a lot of noise and distraction.
Mhm.
Um, as far as like who are the players, right? It's kind of a race to be who is marketed as like the AI and customer success. I think Gainsight's doing a really great job, and I think their features are really cool. But I think it also opens up the opportunity for one of these small players to kind of come up, or someone we haven't even heard of yet, to just do something a bit radical. We'll see.
My
Very cool.
controversial takes will be that the bow tie will eventually make its full and complete comeback. Um,
Has it not I mean, you're in the South. Has it not? Has it gone anywhere in the South?
in my household, yes, there's a strong bow tie presence. Otherwise, not so much.
Right.
I could still
Fair.
pretty safely go to Pulse and be like, I was the guy in the bow tie, and I know
Right.
it's not with anyone. And my slightly more controversial take, I don't know if it'll be soon. I think we will see. I'll probably date myself here. The Facebookization, the TikTokization of the CSP, where instead of like I'm going and I'm looking at kind of an orderly set of stuff, we'll have this will have some sort of algorithmic curated feed of information that's like, here's the next most interesting thing you should look at. And then
Interesting.
maybe this one, you might try this over here. And so again, breaking a little bit out of the rules-based world and into something that's maybe a bit more feed-like and next step
Yeah.
like.
That's really interesting because on my Slack, like, you've got your unread and you can like mark it as read or keep it as unread, and it kind of like swipes, right? So it is kind of like a feed like that. And it is interesting to think about like CTAs or like alerts, AI-based alerts for
Yeah.
those kind of things. Is like, this is at risk. Do you want to trigger this campaign? Like, yes or no or what? Like, that's interesting. I actually don't think that might not be bad.
So swipe left
Depending
or
on how it's
right,
done.
depending on the action you want to take, and a scroll up if you don't even want to look at
Yeah,
it.
but I mean,
The, the
think in the morning.
Tinderization of your CSP.
Yeah. But think in the morning you log in as the CSM and you've got like all of your CTAs, the overdue, which probably is a million, but um, um, your warnings, your alerts, your CTAs, whatever it is, kind of right there to power through. I mean, I've been using it on Slack. You open it up and there's a bunch of channels, and some of them are auto alerts and things, and you can just kind of go through and clear out all your unreads on Slack pretty quickly. I
Well,
think that's kind of cool.
Okay.
Get on developing that. Maybe there's something there.
All right. I'll start coding tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't
looking
ask for my
forward to it, Matthew. Well, thank you so much, Tony, for joining us today. This has been an absolute fun time, and just getting to hear your thoughts and where you think the industry is going and what you've seen in the industry has been just incredibly fun and enjoyable. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.